Welcome to chapter 6 of the book of 2 Samuel. It begins, and David gathered again every young man from out of Israel, 30,000. It's a lot of people, mainly a army type of a gathering. And David rose up and went, and all the people with him, and some of the rulers of Judah, to lead from there the ark of God. Now the ark of God was with Abinadab, a family that were out in the field harvesting, and they saw the oxen pulling a cart from the Philistines, where the ark had been captured during a battle where Eli, his two sons were killed. And then the Philistines had problems with the ark being with them, having these boils on them. And so they ended up sending the ark back with a oxen that had a female that had just had calves, and to see what it would do, if it would want to stay with the calves or if it would go back towards Israel. And the oxen went towards Israel, and these people of house of Abinadab saw it and took the ark and put it into their place. So this is where we're at. So now David wants to lead this ark from the house of Abinadab and bringing it into the city of David, Zion, which we went through in the last chapter. And so the place, the name of the Lord, upon which the name of the Lord of the forces is called upon, the one sitting upon the cherubim upon it. That's in Jerusalem. And they set the ark of God upon a new wagon, because they burnt the old one when they sacrificed the animals, the house of Abinadab did. And they lifted it from out of the house of Abinadab on the hill. And Uzzah and his brothers, the sons of Abinadab, led the wagon with the ark. Now, it doesn't say too much about the house of Abinadab. One place I read where they called them Levites, but I looked and I couldn't find anywhere where it said that they were Levites. Could very well have been, but they weren't, I believe, priests that were allowed, the only ones allowed to take the ark. This is what I see. So it then continues, and it says, and his brothers went in front of the ark, Uzzah and his brothers. And David and all the sons of Israel played before the Lord with instruments in accord. Ermosmenes, almost harmony comes almost, but that's not it. But here we have a word you can add to your English derivatives book. Organis, an organ, an instrument in accord, and with odes, and with lutes, and with stringed instruments, and with another word you can add, tympanis. We have a timpani, comes from that, and tambourines of some sort, and with kimvalis, a transliteration into English, cymbal, from kimba, simba, and with avlis, pipes, hydraulic, ali, of a hydraulic water pipe. Now, all of these, the sons of Israel were playing before the Lord. Now, I hear that there are some churches that don't allow musical instruments, which to me seems unbiblical, because right here we do have all these instruments, lutes, which is a stringed instrument, tambourine, which was like a drum, and cymbals, which were metal, and pipes of some sort, which they blew, a wind instrument. Sounds like an orchestra. And they come unto the threshing floor of Nahon. and there's different spellings for this place. In Chronicles, we'll see another spelling for it. And Uzzah stretched out the hand to the ark of God to hold it. And he held it, for the calf distracted it. So it was going to fall over of some sort, going around a curve. So he held it. And the Lord was enraged in orgy, anger. We have orgy, comes from that word, with Uzzah. And God struck him there for the rashness. And he died there by the ark of the Lord before God. So touching it and not being of the priesthood, I would imagine, is the reason why God struck him. Rashness, thinking that he could. Now, it was probably in Uzzah's heart to keep it from falling, but yet he didn't fear the things of God. And it makes me think of so many times that we maybe think we're doing something correct, but it might not be with God. So I was thinking one thing is this: if only the Levite priesthood could touch the ark, then what about the opposite? Today, with Jesus, there's no mention of any priesthood, and no place in the New Testament that anybody is a priest like they were in the Old Testament. That all came to an end. But yet, shortly after the death of Christ, the development of I see it in the book of Revelation. They're called the Nicolaitans. The Nico is victory in the laity of the people, over the people, some type of priesthood that was invented by the early church. And so we now have priests in some major denominations. But what if God said that there's not to be a priesthood because we are all open to God? We do not have to go through a priest. We have the Holy Spirit within us. The temple of God is, we are the temple of God. So to put this priesthood up, is that a rashness? I'll let you be the judge. So Uzzah died there by the ark of the Lord before God. And David was depressed, because of which the Lord cut severance with Uzzah. Now, exactly, cutting severance is a figure of speech. Killed him. And he called that topos, topography, a derivative, a severance of Uzzah until this day. And David feared the Lord in that day. There's the phobe. So now God has struck this Uzzah, and David now fears the Lord. Has to do things right, not just whatever you feel like is good. And he said, well, how shall the ark of God enter to me? And David did not want to turn aside to himself the ark of the covenant of the Lord into the city of David on his own. And David turned off with it into the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, Getheu. Now, I looked up trying to find out exactly who these Gittites were. They were one place mentioned of the 600 men that followed David originally, the Cherethites, Pelethites, and the Gittites. Some people think they're from the town of Gath. It's a possibility. There's two different Gaths, one in the Philistia, and the other one is Ramon, Gath Ramon, I believe it's called. So if that were called out from this place, that's a possibility. But so apparently this Obed-Edom had a house there close to where Uzzah was died. And he goes there and he says, and the ark of the Lord stayed in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months. Trees, for try. And the Lord blessed the entire house of Obed Edom in all the things of his. Now, it doesn't say how he blessed them. As a material blessing or spiritual blessing or a physical blessing, children, so forth. And it was reported to David, King David, saying, well, the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all of his because of the ark of God. And David went and led the ark of the Lord from out of the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David, Zion. That's how I put Zion in there, with gladness. And there were with him the ones lifting the ark of the Lord, priests, and 7 companies of dancers. I should have highlighted this. Hori, we have choreography, where dancing and on stage and so forth, choreography. So they had these 7 companies of dancers and a calf and lambs for sacrifice. So they're bringing these animals. And David played music with instruments in accord. There's again organes, in the presence of the Lord. So there it's in the presence of the Lord. Now, can't get more direct and show that not playing musical instruments is not what God would want. Another thing that people think they're doing the right thing and they're not. And David was clothed in a special robe, a stolene. They used to call these robes stoles. Covered your shoulder. Women wore them. My mother did. Stole. And David and all the house of Israel led the ark of the Lord with a cry and with the sound of a trumpet, the phonies, a phone. So they're blasting the trumpets and other instruments. So now here is another instrument, along with the ones we had before. And it happened of the ark coming unto the city of David, that Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked through the window and saw King David dancing and playing music before the Lord. And she treated him with contempt in her heart. Went through a rough marriage. Originally, David was to get her sister, older sister, I think, but King Saul gave her to another man and then gave David Michal, and Michal saved David from being killed when Saul sent his soldiers to come and to kill David, and she put like a mannequin in the bed with a head with hair of a goat, and so he got out of the window and left. And then time went by, and Saul gave her to another man. And then we read about where David was faced with Abner, the general from the north, and wanted to make a treaty with David. And David said the one condition is that they would bring Milcol back to him. And so Milcol went with Abner, and her husband followed, crying, until finally Abner had enough and sent him back. So now she is with David, but now she treats him with contempt in her heart. Oh, how things can change in relationships. And they carried in the ark of the Lord and put it aside in its place, topon, in the middle of the tent. So apparently he moved the tent from where it was. Bethel, I think, was the last place. Maybe another one, but he moved it into Jerusalem. So they had this tabernacle there, the tent, which David pitched for it. And David offered whole burnt offerings. I should have highlighted that. Holocaust comes from that word. Before the Lord. And peace offerings, Irene means peace. And David completed offering the whole burnt offerings and the peace offerings. Now, I don't think he did it himself, but he was instrumental in having these take place by the Levites. And he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of the forces. Pantocrator, the Lord Almighty. But here it's the forces, Dynameon, dynamite, dynasty. And he portioned to all the people, among all the force of Israel, from man unto woman, to each a biscuit of bread, and broiled meat, and a pancake from the frying pan. So they prepared all this in Jerusalem, and the people came, and they all received this food. And all the people went forth, each to his house. And David returned to bless his house. So after all this, he goes to the house, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came forth to meet David and said, "Well, how is the king of Israel glorified today, who is uncovered today in the eyes of the girls of his bondmen, as one uncovers by uncovering of the ones dancing?" And David said to Michal, "Well, in the presence of the Lord I will dance, who chose me over your father," patera, paternal, "and over all his house, to place me in the lead over his people Israel. And I shall play and dance in the presence of the Lord. And I will be uncovered again thus, and I will be useless in your eyes, and with the girls of whom you said of me, not being extolled." And Michal, daughter of Saul, did not have a child until the day of her dying. So apparently David never went into her for relations, so she never had a child. Now we go into the next chapter, story of David and wanting to build a house to God. Hope you'll join us in chapter 7, find out how that's all comes about. And until then, God bless.